Okay, we're live. How exciting. Thank you for joining us wherever you're watching, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube. This is another one of our Fresh Expressions live conversations. I'm Lizzie and I work for Fresh Expressions, and also I'm a lay pioneer in Liverpool. And with my husband, we set up Story House, which is a coffee shop and a charity and a fresh expression of church. And I've got Ben and Ez with me today, which is really exciting. And yeah, I'm wondering, like, you guys, to start with, just so people can kind of get to know you, can you kind of tell us where you are and how you know each other?
Well, I'm Ben and I'm in the dining room of our house, which is in a village called Cholton Down in Dorset, in rural Dorset, and I'm a missional listener, and I'm married to.
Well, me, yeah, I'm Ed. Yeah. We're in the same house, just in different rooms. We thought this would be a better way of doing it, but yeah, Cholton Down, near Dorset, in Dorset, yeah.
Brilliant. Oh no, that's great. It's brilliant that that you're kind of in the same house but in different rooms. It like I've done things like that as well with my husband over the past few months, and yeah, it's quite nice to kind of be in a different room for a while when you're in lockdown. Like,
we can't tell each other off either, you know, if we say
yeah, that's true. You could just keep going. So yeah, thanks for joining us today. And for anyone who's watching us, if you've got any questions for these guys or any comments, then do put them in the comment section and we can try and get to them. So basically we've got 30 minutes to kind of pack in as much as we can into this conversation. So could you guys tell us a little bit about your story of your kind of involvement in Fresh Expressions, like and where you are now, kind of what got you to where you are now. I don't know who wants to go first, but yeah, just kind of start with how you got to this point. What's your story?
I've got to say, I really didn't know anything and still don't know enough really about Fresh Expressions. So both of us were ministers, Baptist ministers. We still are Baptist ministers. A couple of years ago, I was a senior leader of a church in Bristol, and Ez was on maternity with our 4 children. And whilst we were there, we felt called into something completely different. And whilst I was there, we met this guy called Simon Matterley, who some of you know, some of you seen interviewed, who basically changed our lives. And he came up with this whole missional listening project idea. And whilst he was sharing, we just fell in love with it, really. It just felt like exactly who we were and who we are. And we always had a call to Dorset. We always had a heart for this area, always desperate to sort of see the life of Jesus get known and people live out community in this area. And so we began that. So my first introduction to Fresh Expressions was as a senior leader of a inner city church on a rural Fresh Expression, when I'd never done Fresh Expressions before. And I don't know if I'm doing Fresh Expressions now, but we're involved and we love it. And the best thing about Fresh Expressions for me is just the astonishingly brilliant people you meet along the way. And a rural group that we've been able to get to know and journey with. They're just such inspiring people and have been so important to us. So we don't know much about Fresh Expressions, but we're doing this thing called missional listening, and we've been invited to do some stuff for Fresh Expressions. That was a terrible answer, wasn't it?
No, it's great. Ez can, like, what you do is, like, when you're married, the other half, then they fill in all the gaps, don't they? So yeah. So Ez, like, yeah. Is there anything, like, for you, like, how you're a missional listener as well now? How did you get to become a missional listener? Like how's God kind of been working in your life to bring you to this point?
I think it's a strange one. Like Ben said, I think it's something that we've always, since we started in ministry, we've always felt called to this kind of work. But it's knowing how to start that journey. Because if you say to somebody, well, this is what I'd like to do. I'd like to be a missional listener. I don't think people completely fully understand it, and I don't think we probably understood it in the very beginning when we first sort of started the process. So I think for us, the journey of training, Ben trained as a pastoral minister, I trained as a youth minister, was kind of like the path, the normal path as such, that you would sort of take or you would explore. But I think we've always in our heart have always felt that this is the thing we always thought we would do. And it wasn't particularly clear, but I think having Ben's had 2 church ministries as such, and having that experience to get to this point was quite a good learning curve. And I think it's for us to sort of establish what we could bring and what we could do to get to where we are now. I mean, for me, it's probably slightly different because for sort of the past 11 years, I've predominantly been doing things because we've got 4 children. So it's been a bit of a different experience for me than probably for Ben. And I think that,
11 years.
no, I mean, I'm just knowing what sleep is a little bit now, which that's quite nice. But yeah, I think so we've sort of gone through this process together, but in kind of almost in different places. And I think now is the first time, when we came into this place over 3.5 years ago, I think we felt that this was the first time we'd sort of almost like jointly done things together. And we've taken on very different roles as well. So even though it's in the same place and kind of doing the same thing, we definitely have very defined roles, I think, in how that plays out. And I think all the background to get to this point has been, when you're in it, it's quite hard to understand why you're in it and why you're doing it. But actually coming out the other side and doing what we do now, I think is easier to see how the process of, the training and the different types of ministry and the different types of work has helped us where we're at this point. So yeah, it's been a bit of a
the only thing I would add to this is that both of us have always felt called to the broken and the lost, and those who are struggling, and though we tick the boxes of being fruitful ministers, the churches grew, we had kids, we baptized, though it was seemingly successful, there was a time when we just sat down and thought, actually it's nearly impossible for someone who's broken on the margins of society to become someone who's instigated in this community that we've got now. And we realized that it was an almost impossible journey for a 3rd or 4th generation non-Christian to become the center of a Christian community that was already established, working in an inherited way. So that began the unsettlement, which was, we're called to the broken and the lost. How do we build community that's going to see them thrive and flourish? And that began the journey as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think that's how a lot of people kind of get into thinking about Fresh Expressions, is you're kind of in an inherited church, but then you realize that, there's so many people that aren't in church, but actually the journey to go from finding out about Jesus and then joining that church, is the gap just feels just huge. And I know, like with our Fresh Expression, when we baptized people in the cafe, like some of the people in the church that we came from were surprised we baptized them in the coffee shop and not in the church, but we were like, well, that's just too big a step. And they don't know anyone in that church because that's not necessarily their community. And so I think, it's kind of, you come from that, the institution, in a sense, like and church is brilliant, like we love church, but when you see the journey that people have to go to, especially if they've not grown up in church, and obviously there's more and more people in that position now, the need to kind of bridge that gap. So that's really, it's amazing to hear some of that journey. So you guys, you're both missional listeners now. So could you describe a bit what a missional listener is, what you do? I imagine it, and as you said, that you both kind of it's kind of different the way you approach it in the different roles that you have. So it'd be good to kind of hear both kind of different the different ways in which you carry out your roles, really. So yeah, what's a missional listener?
I think for me, the reason that Ez and I do completely different roles is because we're completely different people. And missional listening really is being who you are authentically in the community and with God. On a personal note, I've stopped using the word missional listener. If Simon's watching this, he'll be his hair out. But the very word missional creates in me a posture of needing to achieve. It creates in me that I'm on a mission and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And in a way, it gives me an agenda before I begin. And so I've got rid of the missional phrase because it unhelpfully leads me to want to expect something now. So I've started calling myself a 360-degree listener, which is basically living as a disciple of Jesus in the community, listening to God. What's he saying? What's he doing? Who is he? What does it look like? Listening to the community. What's the cry? What are people saying? What are the themes that we can see? We're listening to the land. We're listening to the institutions. We're listening to the history. We're listening to everything we possibly can, but not with an expectation that there's going to be any outcome. It's not an expectation, but what we notice is just as we do that, we get invitations to join in, to do something, to witness, to put on an event. But none of the reason for listening is for that. That's just the natural outcome of living a life listening to others. So yes, I stopped using the word missional because it's an unhelpful word for me. I like the word pilgrim witness at the moment.
I imagine there's not probably a typical day, but how do you like approach, say, your week? Like, what kind of things do you end up doing, like, as part of that role?
Yeah. Go on,
Okay.
Yeah, go for it.
I think it's different for us both, because I think because when we started, it was predominantly Ben's role. So I think there was a different sort of expectation to how it would play out. So I think for me, it's probably, so people say, what do you do? I don't even really I don't even call it anything now so much. I just say, well, I do things in the community. I don't even kind of, because I think people around here kind of understand that. So those that don't have any sort of faith background understand what that means. And I think when I sort of came into being here, I was just coming in as somebody who was a parent in the village who had some children at the school, and that's kind of how it began. So I didn't really have a sort of structured set day. And obviously now that's kind of evolved into something different. But I think it's a bit of a weird one in the sense that I think you kind of have a plan of the day of how it's going to work, but because of the environment we live in, I think there's a lot of things that come up in the day that you've really not planned for, which I think is a positive thing. Obviously you take the children to school and then you can be having conversations with people there that you hadn't planned on having, which could then take, an hour to an hour and a half of the morning before you even got home, and it's those sort of off the cuff things that happen as well as your structured day. I think that's probably a bit more it's a bit different for me than it is for Ben, because I think Ben's probably got more timetabled things through the day than I would have necessarily. What do you think, Ben?
Yeah, I think a good way of describing it is just through story, really. So when we moved to the village, it became very clear. We knew a bit about the village before we moved. It was a very divided village, lots of brokenness, lots of people didn't get on. Not everything that starts in the village ends in tears. So, one end of the village doesn't get on with the other end. Dog walkers don't get on with non-dog walkers. nobody likes children. You know, it's that sort of that feeling that everything's a bit broken. I know a bit of hyperbole there. And so just by living and being aware, so Ez would take William, who was born 2 months after we moved here, to the toddler group. And while at the toddler group, there was only sort of 8 or 9 people, and Ez would go along, and it was going to end. It was going to end again because nobody wanted to take it on. People weren't coming, and they basically, just while Ez was there, would just say, "Would you take it on?" and sort of handed Ez the keys. And you know, now that toddler group, well, pre-lockdown, was getting sort of 70 or 80 or 90 people and a completely different atmosphere, and it's wonderful. I got asked to join a parish council because people knew what I was doing in the community. The parish council came to me and said, "Ben, would you do a remembrance service?" So the first time a church service has been done in the village was when the village asked me to do something. The hall asked us to join in, and now the hall's making a community cafe, which they're asking me to help set up. So none of this is our plan. It's all been hanging around listening, and then just the sense of joining in with what God's doing. But of course, as projects start to happen, your diary starts to get a bit fuller. So, but for Ez, I would say this about her, because she might not say about this herself. What Ez is just a natural chaplain. I almost know that all their heads were dropped when they see me pick up the kids at school, because I'm slightly more quiet on the edge, whereas what I really wanted was 10 minutes with Ez making them feel better. And she knows everything that's going on in the school, knows nearly everybody there. She really is people's pastor, people's chaplain. They would call her, and it's incredible. But it's almost like the roles we've got have come out of listening. Yeah, I hope that helps. Does that sound clear?
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. I was just thinking, like, for people who might be listening or listening later, if it's something that maybe they think, oh, I might like to have a go at that, or how would I do that in my context? Do you have any little tips or suggestions of how to kind of try the listening, or like where you start, maybe if it's something you want to kind of get into or have a go at?
I've got so much I could say on this. Do you want to go first, Ez?
Yeah, sure. I think it's just being there as part of what's already going on, rather than trying to do new things or put things on necessarily. Definitely for us was actually, in the beginning, I just remember sort of we were having a conversation, and Ben's a lot more intentional about stuff probably than I am, and it was about a lot for us was just about being patient and waiting, and just then it would become clear as to what was to happen and how it was to happen. And I think a lot of the time when you're in a role, especially in a church setting, there's usually a feeling you should be putting things on or doing things, but actually just being part of where you live and involved in your community, I think things naturally come out of that. And so by us doing that in the very beginning, and Ben explained the story of like the toddler group, it wasn't my intention to go there and to start leading a toddler group at all, but it felt like I knew that was the right thing to do, and alongside with it, another parent who's not from she doesn't have a Christian background, but we both felt that was the right thing that we should be doing. And I think it's just knowing from just spending time with people and really being patient, because it is, we've been here 3.5 years, and it has, we've had to kind of just, a lot of the time it is just waiting and seeing and getting involved in things, where we feel that we should or naturally fit, but with no kind of agenda to it as well. And I think that's the key thing is just, I think it will become apparent, and I think you just know when it's something that you should be involved in or feel passionate about. And and where you fit. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that Ben does that is just there's no way I would get involved at all, and vice versa. Like the whole, we just, because you've just got your own things of where you naturally fit, and I think it is, but a lot of it is patience is a big thing. It's just waiting.
Yeah.
The big difference almost between us is that so I come from a lifetime of church, lost my, so I grew up in a church and then lost my faith, but came back to church. Whereas Ez doesn't have that. Can I say baggage? Is that all right?
Yeah.
So part of my role that would turn Ez off is I've still got a real desire to see the church grow and change and transform communities, and so that obviously leads me to spending time with vicars, other ministers, other leaders, and some of those conversations are quite awful and others are encouraging. The only thing I wanted to say add into this is I had a great conversation with a local vicar who's typical rural vicar, lots of churches, not with many in each one. This is quite an awful time. What does it mean? It's even more fragile than it was. And he sort of said, Ben, he said, how should I be doing what you do? And I sort of said no, because he's not called to do what I'm doing. But what he can do is release others in his churches to listen. What he can do is stop taking up their time doing all this stuff for just an hour on a Sunday, or meetings that keep this event on the show on the roll, and free them up to just build relationships in their community. And I think the more we can free people up to be authentic with their neighbours and in their workplaces, the more and more chance they will get to witness and get to share lives with people and get to show Jesus. To begin, I almost don't want to say anything, because whenever we have a strapline or a way of doing it, we start thinking that rather than being authentic ourselves. And I think I just want to say that God called each and every one of us to be our unique selves and to just live that out authentically. But if you really want somewhere to begin, Pete Atkins. Has he been interviewed yet, Pete?
He has. He's also, look, he's just said hello. Hello, Pete.
Hello, Pete.
And then Kath's here as well. She said, love the idea of you just arriving, just being there and seeing what's going on, shows sort of vulnerability, which is very attractive. Yeah. So, yeah, they're here.
Pete and Kath are basically my heroes, and I talk about them more than I do Jesus now. Pete encouraged his threshold church to go to villages which weren't their own, to just spend time praying, listening, and then blessing what they could see, and then having a question mark of imagining what God might want to do or be saying. And I think that's a really good place to begin, to thank God for what you can see in your community, and to ask God to bless it, to bless the doctors, surgeries, the schools, the farming, everything. And then to just ask that question, what might God be doing? What would it look like if God's kingdom came today? And what would it look like to join in with what he's doing?
Amazing. I think it is, sometimes people don't realize that actually they're doing it naturally, but they just need someone to kind of go, no, God's using you, at the school gate. Like a lot of people that come to our community, the school gate is such a great opportunity, but they're just doing it naturally and building up relationships and conversations, and God's using them. But it's almost going, this is you, like God's using you here, kind of to give people the confidence to kind of see what's already happening as well. It's very ordinary, and I think we play that down.
And what I think stops people doing is this sort of training, so when you're on the school gates, you need to be able to give your testimony in 1 minute, or you need to invite them to an alpha course, or you need to bring them on a Sunday to the seeker friendly service. And I think we're almost embarrassed to do it, whereas what missional listening is we're not building relationships so that we can get you to us. We're not getting you so that you can come to a service I might one day put on. We're building a relationship with you just because simply God created the world to have a relationship with us. Jesus came to be in relationship with us, and we're here just to be in relationship with you, and we're going to learn from you and hope to gain permission to share some of the stuff that we've learned on the way.
Yeah.
And I think
it's
that permission.
Mm.
Go on, Ez.
I think it's knowing that it's okay to just be you. I think it's just being yourself and being real is actually better than, like, you know, Ben was saying, like having the intention. But if you go with no intention, I think it just works better. I mean, you know, there's so many relationships that we've built up, well, you know, with people here that actually it's just from being with them and getting to know them as they are, and not having that fear. Like, you know, I was only talking to someone the other day, it was just saying how holy I was, and I said, obviously I am really holy. And we were joking about it, but it's because she will talk to me literally about anything, and there isn't that, she's not got that worry that my intention is to try and to get her into a church or to try and like convert her or that, you know, it's that kind of thing. Just have a normal relationship, and she will share literally everything that's going on in life. And I think that, you know, that's what's made the difference. It's almost like it's not like not having that baggage behind us. Almost we're just here as we are. I don't know.
And can I just add into that's a really difficult posture to have. You know, everything in society tells us to achieve and be successful. Everything with our church hats on tells us that we need to count numbers and feel like we're achieving and justify funding. We've been so fortunate to have Simon Matterley and Rural Ministries behind us, who basically, Simon said, in 5 years, if all you do is love your wife and kids a little bit more, then we're happy with that. And he meant it. And but even with that permission, I've still felt like I've needed to prove myself. I've still felt like I need to achieve and have stories to share. And I just want to say it's a really tough posture to get. But the sooner we can learn that all we're called to be is authentically the people of God and to live our lives in community and build relationships, sooner I think we might see God's kingdom come.
Yeah, definitely. I think you're right to kind of, it was great that you brought that up, because I was thinking about that as a question of, you know, to have that freedom is great, and to not come with an agenda, but there's like an internal wrestling. And I think especially if you've grown up in church or church leadership, you're looking at numbers, you're like, how many events have we got on, what we're inviting people to, and it can be filled with activity, and but then you lose the relationship side. It's not to pass on an invitation, it's just to get to know the people and love and serve them that are in your community.
Well, maybe the measurement is how many deep relationships are we living, you know, where, do we, you know, how authentic are our relationships with those in our community, rather than have we managed to get anyone to a service.
And I think it's just that constant challenge, and then God continues to shape you, and you move away from that. But it's definitely a process. We've got like a few questions, right? I know we've kind of done half an hour, but there's a couple more questions I wanted to ask you. So because I'm terrible at timing anyway. But this, if we do really quickly, Kath's question first, because the other ones can lead into something else. Do you see the kids have a role in what you're involved in, or how do you see the kids' role? Because obviously you are a family, you've got 4 children. What's their role in it? What are your thoughts on that?
I think initially we were sort of concerned of how that would play out, because obviously we're not in a formal setting as such. But actually, I think that for me, I think I've learned a lot from them being in this, because I think they've kind of been a gateway to relationships as well, but also that it's that simplicity of their faith that's really played out in the journey so far, really. But also I think having people round, you know, to ours, or when we've been to the parks, or we've been out in like the community, I think that it's kind of also, we kind of have to be a little bit intentional with them, because we're not in that structured setting. So I think there's that fear or the worry that you're not giving them enough, like kind of teaching, or the kind of the biblical side of things. But then equally, I think it's a surprise of how they help shape what's going on here. And actually, they've been really key to a lot of the relationships and things that we've done here with people. I think probably Ben was a bit more intentional. Or
well, thinking back 3 years ago when some life was turned upside down, and forgetting some of the things that happened, but one of the things that went through my mind was, I'm a really good professional minister. So that if someone comes to me with a pastoral crisis, I can go round and I can deal with them one-on-one. And now suddenly I was having to do ministry with a family where my kids are pretty rude at times and they're pretty chaotic. One of our friends in our little missional community calls them, what do you call them, wild, doesn't she? Jane calls them wild.
Yeah, they're like, she said, you just imagine children going around, just like with nothing on their feet, and
that's our thing. But then I realised but ministry isn't now what we go and do when we're being professional. Ministry is what we do when we're around our kids. So we are missional as a family. The way we live our life is missional. Now I'm using the word missional. Did you notice that? And they're very much involved and feel very much a part of it. Gracie said to me just a couple of weeks ago, our eldest daughter, she said, "Will we take our church to New Wine when it's back open?" And I said, "Oh, what do you mean by our church?" And she just ran off this list of people that we've been doing communion with on a Thursday night, and other friends that we picked up along the way where we do different things. So, they're very much involved. It's very much a family thing, and we no longer separate ministry and family life. It's all ministry.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think it's so important because discipleship is like a whole life thing, and so often it's like compartmentalized, and it's also modeling, like I don't know, a family who follows Jesus. Because something we found at the moment, because obviously we can't meet up, and I'm in Liverpool, so we've been in lockdown for like forever. Like we were the first ones to go down again, but like we can't. We're trying to help the families learn how to be Christian community in their home, that kind of domestic church in a sense. And I think so if you guys are like modeling that, I think that's fun. Yeah, it's a fantastic example.
When you're in church, you have little touchstones where you can see people when they come to see you. So the Alpha course, the Sunday service. Whereas when you're pioneering, every single aspect's an opportunity to talk about God. It's every single aspect God's involved in. And that's just so amazing that God's involved with even pushing your kids in the park. I go to the park with my kids, and not many of the other parents go with their kids. They just sort of go at the park on their own. And I sort of end up with like 20 kids playing with me. And I'm like, it's just wonderful. Yeah.
That's brilliant. Amazing. We're like moving on. We've got basically the last couple of questions were about the future of the rural church, because you guys are in a rural context. And like Sue Christie from Lincoln, she's asked a few questions. So she was saying, like, are there churches in your village? And if yes, how is it working with them? Which kind of could probably lead us into that kind of final reflection on the rural church. So are you connected with the local churches? How does that relationship work?
I want to play with the question really, but I'm not going to. The answer: there's no inherited church in the village, which was why one of the reasons that it appealed, because we didn't want to step on anyone's toes, and wanted to live and get to know some of the Anglicans and the other, basically the rural Dorset Anglicans, and we wanted to get to know some of the vicars before, so we could work in partnership. But yeah, no other churches apart from, I guess, the invisible church, which is, I guess, who we are now and the people we're doing life with.
Yeah. Amazing.
But and what other churches in other areas? And
yeah. In a lot of kind of contexts, people see the rural church as something that might be, well, it's a, for those who are kind of ordained, it can be quite a challenge, because maybe they've got goodness knows how many churches that they're trying to kind of lead at the same time, and they're limited in resources and finances, and it's not, there can be quite a bleak picture sometimes of the rural church. But what are you, for just to close, like what are your thoughts on the future of the rural church? Where do you see God at work? Are you hopeful? Yeah, what are your kind of final reflections as people who are living in a rural context and yeah, being like Jesus and meeting people and creating community? What are your thoughts on the future of the rural church? Just a small question to finish.
Do you want to go out or shall I?
Well, my thoughts are probably different to yours.
I don't know. You go first. Let's see if they are.
I think that yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's kind of a place for different things, and I don't know whether locally, I think that what's offered locally is a different place to what we offer and what we do. And I think that people that go to established rural churches will probably be looking for something different than is necessarily what's happening in the community that we live in. So I think it kind of meets a need there. But I would say more so the people that I spend time with and see on a day-to-day basis, for me, it might be different for Ben, but they more often than not wouldn't go to a formal rural church setting. So
well, we
I
wouldn't
think
go,
that
would
there's we wouldn't either, but I think for me I see it as a lot of things would be beneficial in the where we're at and what we're doing now. I think that more people will feel comfortable and have a better understanding of life in their community than going to a place, say, on a Sunday morning. And I think as well, the way that life is evolving and changing, and especially where we are, there are a lot of families that are separated. There's a lot of people that have work commitments. They're not going to necessarily go on a Sunday morning at 9-10 o'clock to a service as such. So I think it's just there might be that need there at the moment, but I think for me, I think that it's more about how we're building up relationships and life with people where we are than actually physically going to a place. Ben might be different on that.
So for me, it's a two-stage answer. One is, what's the future of the existing church in the villages? Not great. Let's be honest, the statistics go. I've got less hope for it than I had before lockdown, because they've had this wonderful opportunity of having months now where they've not had to be in the buildings and do what they've always done, and yet all I've seen is this attempt to do everything they did before online, and this desperate desire to go back to what they've always done. So I think that the church is beautiful. It will carry on, and it may come to a point where it's it quietly dies. But I have great hope, because everywhere I look in the villages, people are still hungering after God. People are still looking to find out who they are, what their identity is, why they're made, what they're meant to live for, what happens when they die. So I have no doubt that that this is an exciting time for those of us pioneering in the rural areas. I think we need to keep mission now as a byproduct, not our focus. Our focus needs to be being pilgrims that are countercultural to the area we're in, and then mission will be a byproduct of that. It just will happen. God is at work. He's transforming lives. He's bringing good news to the poor. He's bringing new life, and he's reconciling all things, and that's happening. We just need to have a humility to strip ourselves of our agendas, so that we might allow God to be God and join in with all that He's doing. So just to say, my one thing is, I can't get over the last 3 years what a change has happened in my life. The idea that be born again, well, it's be constantly born again. And my challenge, and I think all of our challenges, is to keep coming to God with empty hands, to keep coming to God needing to be born again, to find out what his purposes are, and to fall back in love with him so that we can live a life that is shining like stars wherever we're called.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. And it's a really great challenge. And I think I think sometimes we overcomplicate church or mission, and it's just, to kind of bring it back to kind of simply, being that shining light and focusing on the relationship rather than doing that first, and not mission and projects. I think it's such an important lesson, especially in this moment. You'd hope it would shake us out of that, really. Thank you so much for sharing. Ben's going to be joining us. We've been having the rural learning communities for people who are interested in kind of rethinking church in a rural context, and you're going to be at the next one, I think, aren't you? Which is it next week?
I think.
Yeah, you're hosting. Oh, that's a very important role. I think it's booked up, but we are hoping to run some more in the new year. And also there is a rural conference in the new year as well, which there'll be more information about. And we do have our Fresh Expressions gathering online in December, and I'll put a link up under this feed so that you can book on. It's a 2-day event which you can go to, but also there's an evening event on the Thursdays, early December, where we'll be talking about what does it mean for the church to give itself away, and we'll have some different pioneers from different contexts and backgrounds kind of talking about it, and then we'll be discussing that as well. So there are a few more things for you to get involved in if you're interested. Thank you everyone for listening. Thank you, Ben and Ez. And hopefully one day we'll meet in person. I've met so many people virtually. I'd really like to hang out in person, but thanks for listening, and there will be more online conversations soon. So goodbye. Thank you. Cool.